This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak to Nashville-based guitarist Cory Congilio, and we talk about the importance of finding a coach. Enjoy the episode. Hey, it's James Taylor. I'm excited today to bring you our featured guest. His name is Cory Congilio, and Cory is a Nashville-based guitarist, producer, and guitar instructor. Over the past 10 years, Cory has taught hundreds of students ranging in age from 6 to 80 and has released 6 top-selling courses for Truefire. Cory is also now an artist clinician for Martin Guitars, and I'd like to find out how that got started and how that's going as well. So, Cory, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, James.
So, share with our listeners what's going on in your world just now.
You know, a little bit of everything, which is what I hope to kind of impart via this podcast, is that if you want to eat with a guitar in your hand, you got to do a little bit of everything. So it's been busy. Life has been busy.
And how did you get started on the guitar? What was your initial introduction to the instrument? And at what point did you go, okay, this is what I want to do for a living?
That's a relatively easy question to answer. I started actually playing saxophone, and my family, my father, my uncles all played guitar, and I thought it looked really cool. And I just when I was playing saxophone, I was like, you can't sing and play the saxophone at the same time. And that was one of the things that kind of drew me to the guitar. It was more the accompanying aspect of it. And I started when I was 13, and I remember we had to write in one of my English classes or something, we had to write a resume. And my resume was done in like 10 minutes because I knew I was going to be a musician and I was going to go to music school and all of that sort of thing, which I never did go to music school. But ultimately, I knew from that point that I was going to make my living playing guitar. And
how did you kind of finish school, and then how did you kind of get into the world of actually playing professionally?
I started playing professionally, I usually say around the age of 18, where I was doing it was like church picnics and bingo nights and, whatever, with a little trio that I had with some high school friends and backyard parties. I mean, I figured as long as I was getting paid for it, I could call myself a professional. So that's where I kind of mark it at, because I just knew that this is what you do. You do this and you get paid, and didn't realize that there was other things on my horizon that would sort of contribute to a lifestyle of actually making money playing music.
And when did the actual teaching part come in? Because obviously you're also known now as a teacher through stuff with Truefire, and your courses as well. So at what point did you kind of first get introduced to actually teaching guitar? And did you, right from the start, do you have a sense, okay, I think I can do this. I enjoy doing this, or did it take a little while?
Well, I was very apprehensive about teaching because I didn't have formal musical education. I had spotty private lessons here and there with really, really strong instructors. And a lot of it was my own sort of musical cultivating that led me to kind of the way I played and the way I eventually would teach. I worked in some retail music locations that had, teachers on site. I decided that I wanted to get into it in about the year 2000, and I was teaching anywhere from 40 to 60 students a week once I started doing it. It was a very busy location. I did actually hit 80 students a week at one point, and it just kept growing from there. And it got to be really cool in the sense I started doing house call lessons, going to people's homes and meeting a lot of really cool people that I still stay in touch with today, and some of which that have followed me around the world via social media. And so it was great. I mean, it was a great way to kind of get into doing what I now do with Truefire.
And then what was that introduction into, obviously you were teaching all these one-on-one students, but I mean, if you're teaching anywhere really over 40 students a week, that's a big commitment to be doing that as well. So how did you kind of move into also doing actually creating kind of evergreen type of teaching content, whether it's the Truefire courses, or I wasn't sure if you'd moved doing books first and then into the videos, or did you just go straight into video?
Well, I did go straight into video, but it's a really interesting story as to how I got into the Truefire connection. And again, for those that don't know about Truefire, it's quite possibly the largest, most comprehensive online resource for guitar instruction there is. And I was working with the Fishman company that's popular for making acoustic guitar products, pickups and amplifiers and that sort of thing. And we were using Truefire as a resource to kind of shoot and host our product videos at the time. And they said, wow, you're really good on camera and you speak well. Do you teach? This isn't what we do. We actually teach these online courses. And I had no idea who they were, but I'd seen all of these famous guitar player pictures around their office, of these legendary players that have been on the Truefire site. So we started talking about it, and it took us almost 4 years to actually decide what I was going to do for them. And once I did my first course, it really just kind of shot me out of a cannon in their network, and it's been a great relationship ever since.
Yeah, I mean, Brad and Alison, they're great, good friends as well, and they've got some great teachers there. We've had a couple of them on the show more recently. Tommy Emmanuel, we had Tommy on recently as well. So talk to us. A lot of our listeners, they are either professional players themselves or they aspire to doing music full time. So they're often very interested in kind of daily rituals and kind of habits of other musicians. So, I mean, what does the first hour of your day look like?
Well, you're actually imposing on the first hour of my day. Only because I say that because I'm over here in Central Time in the U.S. But it's usually my day when it comes to centering musically and business-wise. It's kind of doing the normal thing: coffee, breakfast, and either reading or maybe trying to work on some music of the day, whether it be for my own personal growth or for I work with a lot of different artists, and I'm always working on music to kind of, whether it be to accompany them or do something in the studio or a writing session or something like that. So it kind of gets me kick-started, along with listening and, taking care of my body too, working out, stuff like that.
So that's obviously not a Tennessee accent that you've got there. So
it is not.
Where did the move to Nashville come in?
I moved here only 2.5 years ago. It's been a great journey so far. I'm more of a northeastern U.S. guy. I grew up in New Jersey and migrated across the state of Pennsylvania, and just kept making friends and contacts here in the Nashville area. And a lot of my friends had moved here from where I was, living at the time, which was Pittsburgh, and it just made sense to kind of to get down here. And just, the one thing that people say is that you just have to be here. And when what that means is you never know what can happen. You never know who you'll meet. It's really quite magical in that sense, that you'll, different experiences can come upon you without you even sort of wishing that they would.
Yeah.
They sort of happen because of where you're at. It's really, really interesting. If you're a model, you go to New York or LA. If you're a surfer, you go to Hawaii. If you play guitar, you come to Nashville.
I mean, it's funny because I've spoken to so many artists, either session players or touring players recently, who have now make Nashville their home, and many of them have moved from New York or there was a big move in it must have been like late 80s, early 90s of a lot of LA players that kind of moved over, like guys like Dave Hungate, who was with Toto, and a lot of guys kind of moved over there as well. So it feels like obviously it's a real music city, and it's not just people maybe from outside the area think of it as country music, but there's a lot of other kind of styles of music that are going on as well.
Well, to speak to that, 2 points. It is a music city. I love the fact that I'll be in a coffee shop ordering my coffee, and there's 3 different tables occupied by people that are talking about their sessions for the day, their writing appointments, their gigs. it's really cool to know you're amongst, a family of people all working towards the same thing. People always say, "Oh, it must be so competitive there." I was like, well, I don't know. People have just tried to help me since I moved here, so I can't really speak to that. And I think that goes for a lot of people. But also, like I said, that kind of dovetails into the fact that, yeah, it's a music city, but it's a real people city and people town. I think that's what people gravitate towards, is they want a connection with people first, and the music second, honestly, because I think when you put everything other than relationships first, I think you can fall short of a true connection.
And what would you say is your biggest weakness as a music artist and as a creative person?
Not taking advantage of all of the great networking here, because I like to stay home. But lots of times when you're networking in Nashville, it involves a glass of bourbon and some late nights. But hey, that's not all bad. And I'm sure it sounds like I might have had some late nights, but I'm really getting over an illness right now, so forgive me.
And then on the flip side of that, what would you say is your biggest strength?
My greatest strength is the thing that, I've heard many people say, like, that when musicians drop the ball, and I never had to teach myself this. It was just return phone calls, return emails, return texts promptly, and be as professional as you can be. I've been lucky to be. I dipped my toe in the corporate world water very lightly, or gingerly, if you will. But it taught me how that even though this is music, this truly is the music business first and foremost. And most of the people in it are used to working in business and not used to working in music. And I think that I have close to, dare I say, mastered both of them, because I think I understand the way musicians think, and I understand the way people that handle your expense account thinks. They have a job to do, and you have to, keep that in mind as you go about your creative business as well.
I mean, it's so important, that sense of like doing the follow up, whether it's at the going to you're an event and you're chatting to other musicians or the folks in the business, and then you get a card or something, but actually then ensuring that you do the follow up, even if it's just very simple of just reaching out saying, "Great meeting you. We need to let's grab coffee at some point as well." Some of the simple things, as well as obviously following up if you're getting interest for booking shows or for other things as well.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with the whole thing about Nashville too. Is you will meet a lot of people in a week, even a day sometimes, but the ones that really matter with as far as relationships that have longevity are the ones you need to continue to cultivate. There's going to be relationships that fall by the wayside, but the ones that really stick, you'll know how to pursue them properly, and then have really strong, meaningful relationships that have integrity.
So you've got all these different things on the go. Obviously, you've got the teaching side, you've got the session side, the playing that as well. What is the one thing that you're working on just now that is exciting you the most?
Well, I'm working with. That's a two-part answer, if you don't mind. I've started to work with, over the past year and a half, an artist signed to Columbia Records. His name is Stephen Lee Olson. Brilliant singer-songwriter, just knocks my socks off every time he writes a new song. And I've become his band leader over the past year, and we're in the infancy stage of trying to get his career off the ground. And I say we because I've really learned so much about the business, in the sense that it takes, as he puts it takes a village to get an artist to a visible level. And we're still, like I said, in the early stages of his career. But it's really fun to kind of be there for the beginning of it. And then I just completed a 5-song EP for my own music, which is horrifying, scary, all that stuff, because I've never done that before. I've always been the side man, love being a side man, to thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm in the process of kind of putting all the finishing touches on artwork, packaging, all that sort of stuff, and just to sort of showcase, what I can do. and I'll continue to kind of make records, I think, forever, but we'll see where it takes me.
And how do you, with all these other things going on, how do you make sure that you kind of splice up some time there to be able to focus on your own thing? Because obviously, so you've been doing a lot of things where you've been a sideman for other players, other artists. How do you kind of carve out that time?
That's the biggest challenge, biggest question is how we do that. I've gotten better over the years at through some coaching. Actually, I'm a big fan of professional coaching and having somebody that you can work with that says like that can just assess you from an outside viewpoint and say you're not using your time wisely. Like for instance, if it's a Truefire course, I'll be passionate about putting that together, but I'm going to procrastinate as much as anybody, as any creative person, because for a number of reasons, who knows? But it's kind of saying, okay, these next few hours or this hour is going to be devoted to this particular part of my project, my me time. Yeah. And your me time, maybe you're writing or for me it's a Truefire course or anything like that.
It reminds me a little bit of that great Stephen Pressfield book, Do the Work. He talks about resistance. It's that kind of resistance, isn't it? Yeah,
I haven't read that, but I love the what's the other one? The War of Art.
Yeah, the War of Art. That's right.
That's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, like pretty much every creative person struggles with this. There's the procrastination thing. There's the, as Stephen Pressfield, he calls it kind of resistance, and it's and we all have to kind of fight those those kind of demons to be able to kind of do the work. If you're a writer, and sit down and write. If you're an artist, kind of get up there, get up to the easel and do it as well. It's a constant challenge.
You're exactly right, and it's nice to have this platform to talk about it because of how many listeners will be reached, and it's just like if I can say one thing, it's like we all have that, we all struggle, and I mentioned before that there's no shame in getting help and asking for help and saying like I don't know how to manage my time, I'm struggling to do this. I've had some really, really great coaches in the past, and being an avid podcast listener, I listened to a podcast about coaching, and somebody said, hey, the Kobe Bryants of the world have coaches, the people that are high net worth investors have coaches, the people that are high in the tech world have coaches, because they want an edge, they're competitive, they want to know how to you take their talent to the fullest.
Yeah, and so I think the great the coaches do many great things, but one of the things that they can be very good at is accountability.
Exactly.
It's just kind of saying, okay, you said that thing last month. Okay, how's that thing going? Because as artists, we're very, we kind of tend to just jump on the new shiny thing. Sure. And it's like just having that person that says, okay, so this is the game plan. How are we executing on this? And someone that can continually. I mean, we spoke right at the start of this about follow up. You want to be good at follow up, but also having someone there to kind of follow up with you and say, okay, so how's that EP project going? What's the latest with that?
Yeah, and there's going to be stress and there's going to be anxiety, and you just have to work through it. And I think having somebody there holding you accountable, but also sort of tapping you on the bottom, at the same time saying, go ahead, get back on the horse,
And
very helpful.
How did you find your coach? I mean, advice to listeners out there that can hear, okay, I need someone like that. How do you kind of go about finding a coach and working with that coach?
It's funny when it's that kind of thing, seek and ye shall find, because if you really want guidance or help in an area, I think start to look around for it. You might listen to a podcast that somebody recommends. The interviewer might recommend a book, and then that book might lead you down another path, and that's how it happened for me. I mean, I've had recommendations come from the strangest places.
And it's, I mean, something that's I think a lot of people kind of don't do, and they're kind of surprised. And I'm trying to remember that there's a cellist who had a big crowdfunding campaign. I've suddenly forgotten what her name is now. And she talked about this idea of actually asking And we actually kind of don't probably do it enough. And just if there's someone that, whether it's like you could talk about guitar, finding someone that's kind of achieved what you've achieved in your instrument, or it could just be maybe more on the business side or the marketing side or whatever the thing is. Just actually finding someone, people out there that that are on that kind of next rung of the ladder from where you're trying to get to, and just asking them, would you be, a call once a month, a Skype call once a month, just to have just to give me a little bit of coaching, and you'd be amazed. I mean, I've reached out to people and done the same thing, and I'm always pleasantly surprised. People say, "Yeah, I would love." People are often kind of flattered to be able to be asked as well.
I agree with that, and I have not only coaches but mentors, and sometimes they don't even know they're mentors.
Yeah,
but I call them that anyway, and one of which is my longtime friend and producer in Pittsburgh, Sean McDonald, who's done a myriad of things in the production world, as well as being a great drummer, and sort of the A-list acoustic session player here, Michael Spriggs in Nashville, and I go to these guys and I say, hey, I'm stumbling on this, and they have so much experience. And what's funny is when you ask, like you said, they're flattered that you asked, I think, but also their answers might surprise you, and that's kind of what's really nice. Is you never know what to expect from people that have a lot of experience, because your view is cloudy because you don't have that experience of how long that they have, and their viewpoint's much clearer down the road than yours is. It's really enlightening.
So tell us about a time when you worked on something, you gave it your all, but for whatever reason it didn't work out like you'd hoped, and more importantly, what were the lessons that you took away from that experience?
I did get let go from one job, one gig, one time, and it was a kind of thing where I was just confused. I was really kind of in almost like a tornado of confusion, if you will, as to why I got let go of the gig. Now I know why, but it really made me more tenacious. And that tenacity sort of began like a slow boil, if you will. I became part of the reason was that my background vocals were inadequate, and like most musicians, I think the reason we gravitate towards music is because some element of it came easy to us. And we were like, ooh, I like that feeling. I want to keep going towards that. So we keep refining it. And for me, it was guitar. And by no means do I say like the guitar is easy. But there's elements I'm like, oh, I can do this. But when it came to singing, I didn't realize it was something that I would have to work at so hard. And I took many, many lessons, years and years of lessons. And one of my other great friends was my first vocal coach. And most recently, the validation I got was when a sort of renowned publisher, songwriter in Nashville said, "You're one of the best high harmony vocalists I've heard in years here in this town." And I couldn't do that now because of my froggy voice, but it really made me say like, wow, a coach told me to celebrate my achievement. And that was a big achievement. The fact that if that guy said it, I know he wasn't BSing me. So it was a big deal. And I said, okay, I've gotten over the hump. It may have taken 10 years, but that was a good achievement. So there was a low point, and then, the high point is the end of the story there.
And I mean, that's a great piece of advice anyway for a lot of musicians. If we had Annie Clements on the show from bass player with Sugarland, who's also in Nashville as well, and she was saying, any bass players listening, if you want to triple the number of gigs, learn how to do backing vocals because it's just so important.
I've got more gigs because of that reason.
Yeah.
And I actually have grown to love it. And then when the artist says, "Oh, when you're not here, we miss your vocals," I'm like, really? That's amazing. Like, so sure. And I've said that forever, like, learn to sing, get the idea. And I have Steve Miller to thank for that. From listening to those Steve Miller records and how all those harmonies were over all his verses and choruses,
And also, I mean, harmonies, especially I would imagine in the Nashville scene, is such a kind of kind of key thing as well. I mean, we're not talking about here, like we're not doing like electronic music for most of the time. So that blend of the voices is a really kind of thing you often think about when you think about Nashville.
That's very true, James, because you have to learn to not sound. You have to learn to sound like the artist and not like yourself, and be transparent and have a good blend, like you're saying. And I've gotten to the point where I put myself behind the beat enough to where if they make a slight inflection vocally with their breath or phrasing, that I can actually follow that. And it's something that I've had to learn to do. I actually play with another group that's a duo, and they're called Reverie Lane. And one of the singers is Tanya Tucker's daughter. Her name is Presley, and she's a wonderful singer, and she sings really far behind the beat. And I have to do that while playing the guitar more in time and follow her. And it's a fun challenge, and it's great. I love the result. It's very cool. But you have to be doing three things at once lots of times.
Yeah, that must be a pretty hard thing to do when you're so used to like playing a certain way with the guitar, and then having to really have the vocals sit, in terms of tempo wise, really sit way back on the beat. I mean, on the
totally.
feel.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit. I've mentioned a couple of podcasts in the past with I did some stuff with J.R. Robinson, who's the drummer in most recorded drummer in history, and on Daft Punk and all kinds of things. And what was very interesting just watching him play was his upper body was very far behind, quite far behind the beat, very loose, had a certain kind of feel, almost like that kind of feel something he's like in New Orleans players. But his bass drum was like a metronome. It was bang on the beat, and obviously that's a lot of the stuff that he's doing that works perfectly because it gives it that that it's got a certain sense of drive and everything with it in the bottom end. But you at the same time with his kind of upper body and with the feel, it has a looseness about it.
Yeah, and that's lots of times things that are undescribable to younger players, and it certainly was not something as a younger player that I understood. I had some great tutelage from some players that were strong R&B players, that really understood what it meant to play behind the beat. And I'm now just understanding how to accomplish that. And I'm not a master of it yet, but I recognize it more now. Put it that way.
Yeah. So, Cory, tell us about any aha ideas or light bulb moments in your life and this journey that you've had in music.
It's one of those things you kind of learn, not to go back to the coaching thing again, but one of the things that happens when you're working with a coach is they're generally trying to get you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And that was a big aha moment for me because it translated musically so much. And it especially translated when I would watch myself on these Truefire videos teaching. I never thought, James, that I would have the success I've had since 2011 with these online guitar instructional videos. It's mind-blowing how many people I've reached around the world, and the proof is in the emails, and it's for every, I think I received my first negative email the other day about someone that didn't like something I did in an instructional course. And that's one out of, 6 courses and nearly 20,000, sales or something like that. I don't want to boast my numbers or whatever, but I've reached a lot of people, and that's to have one negative thing is not too bad. But and the aha moment is to learn how to be yourself and to be okay with it, because it translates to how you're perceived and how you're accepted via your skill, your instrument. And I guess what I'm saying about the video is that video doesn't lie. People can tell if you're not being authentic via video. So when I watch those videos, I'm like, this is what people like, because I'm just putting it straight to them. I'm not trying to confuse them with some long-winded terminology to make them feel lower than me. I'm saying, you want to get to where I'm at with my playing, follow me, do this. And when I try to be myself, when I'm being myself as a player on a session or on a gig, I just try to say, hey, this is who I am. If you like me, hire me. I'm going to do the best for you that I can. I'm going to put your song and your artist first. And I think that authenticity wins all the time. And people sometimes don't even realize that that's what they're buying into, but that's what they're getting is somebody that's that's not playing behind a mask.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was just involved in a course just there where the teacher that was filming the course was Justin Sandico, who's a great Justin guitar. I think he has like something like 2 million subscribers on his YouTube channel now.
My goodness,
and what's great about Justin is he's very, very natural on screen because it's him. There's not a difference between the him on screen and the him as a normal person. And I see this as a wider trend that's going on just now. There's an expression in education about we're going from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. So we're moving from this thing of, it used to be, that person up on the pedestal that you would be pronouncing this is the way to do it, to it being a kind of different relationship now. And I mean, you mentioned about coaching, and it's that guy, that coach, that is a very different relationship from someone that's just kind of saying this is how you need to do it. This is someone that's just being very quite maybe dogmatic in actually how they're doing it, and maybe doing it in a way that doesn't have maybe an authenticity or a naturalness. Obviously, you've got with the instructional videos you've been doing.
Yeah, and kudos to Brad, particularly at Truefire, because Brad literally interrupted the session that I was doing for a product demo with them in 2007, and said, you need to work with us. You're good at this. And I was nobody at that. And I mean, in the sense of like, I was teaching 40 to 60 guitar lessons a week in Pennsylvania. And he said, no, you need to join the team. And it took a long time to finally do that. But he saw that I would be, for lack of a better word, likable on screen, because my information was clear and to the point. And I always wanted to teach people the way I learned, which was kind of like, how do I get to point A from point B from point A, and then learn why I got there later? Because it's kind of like, well, I want to catch the fish, and then I want to figure out why I caught it, essentially. And that's always how I've tried to sort of disseminate information, and it's worked. And I've had some good success with it.
And it's funny, I've been in the studio at times when we've been involved in like filming online instructional things. I was previously at Artist Works, and we had, on the guitar side, we had guys like Paul Gilbert and Brian Sutton and filming those ones. And actually, Paul and Brian are great at it. But, there was some other teachers who maybe struggled a little bit in the camera because they thought they were talking to thousands of people. And David Butler, the founder of Artist Works, he was very, very good with them at saying, when you're talking to camera for teaching this type of thing, just think about the son or the daughter of one of your best friends who you're teaching. It's one person. Just talk to one person. Don't think about talking to thousands of people, because it's just not gonna work. You're not gonna have that naturalness on screen.
That's a good point. It comes from the one thing I learned in a broadcasting class I had was the same kind of idea. You have to talk into that microphone like you're talking to your friend on the phone, or you're talking to one person, and and look at the camera, get used to the camera as being that one person.
And if you want if the listeners want a masterclass on this, if you go on YouTube, Michael Caine, the actor, he does this masterclass on acting, and he talks about the difference between stage acting and screen acting. So with screen acting, and he actually talks about the way that you look at the camera and how you look through the camera in a certain kind of way. And it's just a beautiful masterclass on how to be with the camera. And you hear all the time, people say, oh, that the camera loves that person, because they're very, very good at using the form and the format of it. And I had one teacher did some stuff for me in the past, and great online teacher, and he actually filmed his entire course at home first in front of a webcam, just to get comfortable going through the material and think about where the gaps are, and just getting used to being on screen and delivering in a certain kind of way. So it's a very hard. It's a skill, like you're talking about singing, backing vocals is a skill, but it's a skill that you can learn as well.
One thing I'll add to that is that, and this is maybe like a broader sort of, how do I say it? Okay, lack of a better term, it's more of the hippie analysis. It's like, but the information I'm disseminating isn't mine. It's out there. Yeah. The information's out. I'm not withholding it and like giving you these nuggets. I'm just a conduit, so who am I to have any kind of ego attached to the information? I need to get it out and disseminate it to people that will hopefully understand it. And the same thing with the acting. The acting is what the writer wrote, and the actor is the conduit to get that emotion out to the camera, to the viewer, so they have an experience. Same thing with my lesson, same thing as a performer, all of that stuff. So that's kind of the I think the larger scope that we need to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I'm even though I've been involved in other kind of companies in the past, we're doing online education, and I'm good friends with Brad of Truefire, and what's interesting is people say, well, but you're competitors, or you've competed in things in the past. But the way I think about it is, if I'm into sports, as an example, and I've got books on sports, I'll have books from lots of different writers on in my camp, because I maybe like the way that writer writes, or they're saying it in a different way, or they're doing something, they're bringing themselves in a different way to the material, which is why I think it's great. We've got all these different great online teachers now, whether it's on YouTube or paid or subscription or whatever the thing may be. Berkeley Online has some great courses as well. So as a student, you have the ability to find not just the material that you want to learn, but also the kind of teacher that you want to learn from, that appeals to you as a student.
I couldn't agree more. And really what kind of set me straight on that was Brad and the team at Truefire. They've taught me so much about just, when I say marketing, I don't want to take the sort of the gift of teaching away from it, because we have to market ourselves. It's just the way it is. But they taught me a lot about that, and they also taught me a lot about what you're saying, where I know you just recently interviewed Jeff McErlane, who's a friend, and Jeff and I put out material that's very similar, and they said, don't worry about that. Your students are going to gravitate towards both of you or you individually because of your presentation. Mm-hmm. And it took me a moment to kind of understand that. But then I finally got it, and we both have legions of students because of what we do. And
it's almost the same thing. Like I drove past yesterday, my wife said to me, have you ever noticed how right next to a Starbucks there's always a Subway, and there's always and one of the other chains, I can't remember what the other chain was. And I said, yeah, because they congregate together, because they're quite happy, even though they're competitors, they're congregating together because that is going to increase the total number of people coming to this area, because they know they're going to get they're going to get a wider selection. And some people want Starbucks, some people want Subway, some people want Dunkin' Donuts, whatever the thing. But they're going to have that choice, and they're all close together as well. So, I mean, what's the best advice that you've ever received then about this thing of making it in music and having a career in music?
I've gotten it recently, and I'm sure I've gotten great advice that I've since forgotten about over the years. Let's be honest, but it's gotten me to this point. But one thing that really jumped out at me recently, within the past year, was a good friend that I had met a few years ago before I moved to Nashville. He lives in Nashville now, and I actually play some music with him. And he said, "Don't try to impress Nashville." And what he meant was, don't try to impress your peers. Don't try to impress those that are doing what you do. He said, and it kind of dovetails with this other small piece of advice I got from a very legendary pedal steel player that I was lucky enough to be on a session with. And he said, it's kind of like this whole stay in your lane mentality. It goes back to my being yourself sort of a thing. Where as long as you're just trying to be the best version of you can be, you're always going to have success. And when you're trying to bark up all these different trees, nobody's really going to hear you. But if you just kind of stay in your own lane and continue to cultivate who you are, people will notice.
Absolutely. Great advice there. Be yourself, because everyone else is taken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it sounds so easy to hear, and it's like, yeah, I get it. But let's face it, it's really hard. Yeah. And social media doesn't make it any easier because of how it's basically a human highlight reel of what we do. And I'm as guilty as anybody to do it, and I realize the benefits of it. But it can be, when you're having a bad couple of weeks of no work and all of your friends are on tour, it looks like nobody cares about you.
Yeah.
And it's just the peaks and valleys.
And I think it's hard, especially, if you're especially in a music city, like I'm here in London just now, you're in Nashville. It can be very, very easy also to get pulled into a thing of just incremental improvements in a musical thing. And sometimes it's very useful to go to a completely different place, a completely different thing with it, and because then you can kind of close down a lot of the noise that's happening and actually try and create something that is truly new. And that's a very, very hard thing to do. The incremental improvements are obviously what being in close proximity to other players is great about, but sometimes that can kind of that noise can block out what you're trying to get across.
Agreed. And it's always a better feeling when, I've been here for only 2.5 years, and when somebody who's been here 3 times as long as I have, they say, can we get lunch or coffee? I want to pick your brain about what you're doing to be successful. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because I'm just trying to feed myself as much as you are, but you never know how someone is perceiving what you're doing. And oftentimes we don't perceive how successful we are, via ourselves. We don't put the brakes on and just, step back and see what we've accomplished. So
do you have any gear or an online resource or an app that you really love that you think our listeners should check out? That's
a good question. One of the things I've been doing recently is I've been using this app called Setlist Maker for my iPad, and it's a great place to kind of keep your charts. You can keep MP3s in there. You can keep the everything is detailed as a set list, how much the gig paid, where the gig was, all that kind of stuff. It's just silly little app that has just changed my life. But I've always used resources like Groove 3 for learning software. And I also, for 15 years, I've been using the app called The Amazing Slowdowner for slowing down material to learn that. I remember when it first came out, I thought I had a leg up on the entire teaching revolution. So those are some of my favorites.
And these are great. And what we'll do is if people go to icmponline.com and just type in Cory, you'll be able to find links to all these as well. We'll put these on the show notes as well. Cool. So if you could only recommend one record and one book to our listeners, what would they be? Well,
the record that kind of changed my life was the Emmylou Harris record, Wrecking Ball. Not only because I love Emmylou Harris, but I'm a huge fan of Daniel Lanois and his work. It was the first time I'd ever heard an identity from a producer in his work and then onto multiple works where I said, wow, as soon as that guy strikes a note, I hear him. I don't hear his guitar, I hear him, his personality. And I know as a guitar player, primarily, I would love to achieve that someday where somebody says, that's Cory, I can hear it.
Great. Yeah.
And that record really shifted my focus. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And the book, what was the book that for you would recommend our listeners check out?
A turning point into, it backs up all of the being yourself kind of thing and getting out of some pitfalls of trying to stop impressing people and that sort of thing was a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. It was a really important book in my life.
Great, and we'll put these on the show notes as well. So let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So you've got your guitar and the knowledge that you've acquired, but you know no one, you have no contact, so you've got to kind of start again. What would you do? How would you restart things?
Well, like all creative people, we're brooders, and I would have to think about, I like the path I've gone. I hate the path I've gone. I want to start over. In a perfect world, I would have said, okay, I'm going to be an artist, in quotes, if I use those, and that means I'm going to 100% create my own identity and have something that's unique and be, an Ed Sheeran or somebody like that, or you name it, any particular person, and just forge my own path. But at the end of the day, I can't say I'm upset about all of the music I've learned. I call it neighborhoods. As a guitar player, I stopped in all these different neighborhoods: the funk neighborhood, the swing neighborhood, the the R&B neighborhood, the blues neighborhood, the jazz neighborhood, fusion. And I've picked out different things that have made me the musician I am today. So I can't say that I would give that up. I mean, that was such a cool path to go down, to learn all that music. I wouldn't say I'm a master of any of it, but it's made me, a musician that I am nonetheless.
I love the idea of the neighborhoods. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you just stop in and you visit the deli and the cafe and you move on to the next one and you say, oh, I've tasted that flavor before there in Funkland. I get that, you know, and you may spend 6 months to a year, which I have, and you really get as much as you can out of it.
So share the best way that listeners can connect with you, learn more about what you're up to.
Well, you can find me at all the normal social media spots. Cory Congilio Music on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all my name, one word, Cory Congilio. I do have a website, which is corycongilio.com, and you can find me there, or if you're interested in the instruction, you can find me on Truefire.com as well.
Well, Cory, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Great speaking to you. Great kind of learning about your journey in music, and I wish you all the best with your future teaching and your future writing and recording.
Thanks so much, James. It was a pleasure.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.